Appreciate everyone coming out. We got a nice sized group here, so I thought it'd be best to start this workshop between the Westville Town Council and Planning Commission, just to do a brief introduction of who all is here, and then we'll introduce our two guests. But my name is Tom Fatt. You guys know me. Town Council and Planning Commission.
Mike Albert, Westville Town Council.
Regina Riddell, Westville Town Council and Planning Commission.
Bill McMahon, Planning Commission.
Max Correa, Planning Commission. Darren Mercer, Planning Commission, and Chief of Police.
William Sheriff.
Hiding in the
The
back.
money ladies in the corner.
The money, yes. That feels better. I hope so too. Thank you.
If you need to, just lay down.
All right. Oh.
And then,
Tony will walk on it, but your back popping.
Oh, gosh. What if I turn that, oh, they're not the right
Yeah,
ones. All right. we won't do that.
on that note, our guests today are, and I appreciate Tony Rodriguez and Matt Weirden with LaPorte County Community Economic Development for coming out tonight. I've had a lot of questions with them over the last couple of weeks regarding tax abatements and TIP districts. And these are the guys that work a lot with that in the county, those who know the in and outs, and I thought it'd be good for us as a council and planning commission to get to understand what these two tools can be used for and strategies for it. So with that, Tony.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much. It's certainly my pleasure to be here, and I've had the pleasure of working with a couple of you over the last couple of decades, but I'll try to be real brief just to give you a snapshot of who you're talking to this evening. I paid my way through college on a football scholarship until my college roommate put my name on the ballot for student government. I went to school on a football scholarship in Silver City, New Mexico, which New Mexico, there's a lot of large Hispanic population. And my roommate, who was about this tall, weighed about 85 pounds, his doctor prescribed Western New Mexico University because it's 70 degrees year-round, very dry climate, and he's asthmatic. And so it was the perfect climate for him to live. Well, we got along real well because he was a comedian and just had a great personality. Well, I was doing the football grind, and college football is truly a grind. Well, he put my last name being Rodriguez. He put my name on the ballot for senator as student government. I had no idea, and he told me about it after the election was over, and I had no idea I was on the ballot. He said, "You won, it was a landslide victory, and you're a senator now." And I thought it was a joke, and I attended the first meeting, and I fell in love with student government. It was learning how to be involved in a public meeting, to how to administer. If you've never heard of Robert's Rules of Order, which I'm sure you all have, you probably got the pamphlet. To a college kid, learning those basics of a public meeting, that is, to me, that was all new ground. It was very intriguing, and so much so that I did not go back and play football that second year. Didn't go back my second semester because my college counselor said, you're going to rack up a tremendous amount of debt, and I went to work construction that second semester. And after putting screws through my hands, almost cutting my hand off at a construction job with working for my uncle in construction, I came back one semester off and never missed another day of school after working in construction he had us working 7/12s. And it was a tremendous life lesson in a short period of time. That being said, my degree is in marketing and finance. I went to work right out of college in the city of Hammond, the mayor's office of economic development, which was a really solid place to start in the economic development business because of the politics is a blood sport there, and they really were rigorous about the kinds of criteria they put in place for things like property tax abatement or tax increment finance, which Matt will get into. And so that was 1990. I've spent roughly 8.5 years in the city of Hammond. Went to work after that, left and came to Michigan City and spent about exactly that same amount of time in the Michigan City, running the Michigan City Economic Development Corporation and helping them fill up all the industrial vacancy that they had in and around Michigan City. And we had some very good successes. GAF Materials was one of the larger companies that pay a real solid wage and is real successful today. Deborette, their worldwide corporate headquarters, GAF, I said them, but Freck USA, and to name several others. But we were successful. The Consolidated Biscuit Company, which had the Parco Cookies had left, and we flew out to Ohio and brought in, within a 3-month period of time, brought in a large cookie manufacturer, Consolidated Baking, and they're still thriving there today. So we are fortunate, and during that period of time, really got to know how to use the tools of economic development. And that's why we're here this evening. Tom had picked the phone up and called in my role here in the county in community and economic development. Tax abatement is one of the few tools in the state of Indiana that gives the power to the local community to determine its fate, really. Do you want to assist a company and create an environment that's pro-business, pro-development, tax abatement, and designating an area, an economic revitalization area, gives you that authority. And the way that you do that as an elected body is you declare, first with a preliminary resolution here, you declare the geographic area. In the case of tonight's discussion, and I don't know, Tom, if you wanted to get into any project-specific information about what might be coming down the pipe.
I think right now we'll keep it more general, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, sure. So the first step in you as you're referred to under the statute as the designating body. In the case of LaPorte County, it'd be the LaPorte County Council, but you being the town, you will be, and you're referenced in this resolution here, the preliminary resolution, as the designating body. Your petitioner would come forward and explain to you where their property may be located if it happened to be a single parcel. Quite easy, you attach the legal description to the document, and all the references are made to that particular legal description. But by declaring that the geographic area an economic revitalization area, what you're saying is that this designating body has chosen this area as a primary geography for targeted reinvestment. And we're willing to support declaring this an economic revitalization area so that the company can then submit a statement of benefits, whereby that statement of benefits will lay out for you how much they intend to invest in real estate, how much they intend to invest in equipment, and then you as an elected body decide how large of a benefit you are willing to approve them for. And you have, Matt, is the maximum number of years 10?
10.
It's 10 years.
With exception, when you have super abatement, you go to 20. There's specific language in the statute that allows the community to do that. I've only seen that done a couple of times. And
Right.
for pretty big deals. And that have a lot of job creation, really, but generally speaking, 10 years.
Yes, if you look to the sheet that has the blue stripes across it, what is really, as you look at that, I could draw a graph on that whiteboard there I was going to, but quite frankly, it's almost overkill because this is so simple to understand. The intent of with you as a designating body, when a petitioner comes in front of you saying, we'd like you to support our tax abatement request, tax abatement is, what it is it's graduated relief where it's front-end heavy. So you're graduating their deduction in the first year. Let's say you did approve the applicant for a 10-year property tax abatement because you've evaluated how much they're going to invest. You like the number of jobs being created. It's really an aesthetically pleasing. They paid attention to all the things that you're after as a community to show they're doing it right. They're really paying attention to what the community wants to see going forward, and you want to support that. So the way it mechanically works in the deduction form is you'll see there where it says abatement schedule. The first year, the applicant saves 100%. Okay, so it shows there, the next line next to that, property tax revenue is at 0, and they're saving, in this estimate, we have a $1.2 million investment, and we've calculated based upon New Durham, I believe it was the New Durham town rate, which is the 2.2726 rate. Now, I believe if you're outside of the New Durham city or town rate, it drops down to the 1.8 rate, which is, competitively speaking, it just shows how well the town is managed. I mean, it's one of the lowest tax rates in the state. And that's an attractive thing. It's one of the things as a community you always want to be promoting is we're very lean, we're well run, and that you keep a lid on your spending in the community. But at the same time, you've got things you need to fund and things you need to invest in, and those cost money. And that's what sets your rate, is the cost of your running the city. But getting back to the case of this abatement here, the applicant saves 100% the first year, and then it graduates on the sliding scale down to 5% in year 10, where they become fully taxable. At no point is the land itself abatable. So the applicant will always pay the land tax amount, and at no point in time will the tax ever be less in the second or third or fourth year than it was the previous year. So if I was to draw a graph here, every year you see your increase in new tax revenues every year increasing. So it's front-end loaded, they're saving more on the front end, and you as a community are getting more every year that goes by. They're paying more in taxes. So it's referred to a lot of times as a cash flow tool. So the petitioner, when they're getting started and a new company is making a substantial investment, the front end is really where they need their help, because they're getting established, they're building a client base, they're building the things that are necessary to make them healthy and survive long term, so that by year 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, they're continuing to reinvest. They're coming back to expand again there, and you're supporting. You're also sending a message, we're in this for real, we're in the economic development business, and we will consider you as an applicant to apply for property tax abatement if you fill out, you meet our criteria, and you establish your criteria. I did have an application, the property tax application that you could use as a template. It's the one that the county uses, and it's basic questions. Who are you? What are you planning to build? What are the impacts? How many jobs are you going to be creating? How much are the wages you're going to be paying? So that you can evaluate whether or not it's the kind of company you want to support. Because it should never be assumed to be a given that someone can just walk right in and just automatically get it. Because you're making this decision based upon economic factors, and it means a lot to a company. It does, because you see, it's real money, they're saving real dollars here, and you're really putting a lot of support behind that company. So with that being said, the designation, again, is an area. There are some communities, for example, that have just made a real blanket statement that we are aggressive in doing economic development. They declared their whole community the economic revitalization area and use their municipal boundary as the designated area. It's that simple. You're basically putting the municipal boundary down as the economic revitalization area. And it's something for you to discuss because, like I said right in the beginning, economic development and your goals are defined locally. No one can tell you what you want to be tomorrow. And I know a lot of you participated in the vibrant communities discussion, but you're in that position to determine your future, the kinds of companies you want to help, the kinds of companies that you want operating in your community. Now, and I'm not in any way begrudging a McDonald's, but to do retail property tax abatement and a company like a McDonald's, one would argue that that is not good public policy because those companies make their investments based upon population, and they're coming into a market almost predetermined that they're going to either be there or not. So there's a lot of things you can research when looking at what kind of a policy you want to have on your property tax abatement. But under the state statutes, you can abate just about anything other than casinos, massage parlor, the things that are obviously...
Racetrack.
Yeah, racetracks, suntan.
Facility. Yep.
But if you had an area that, let's say it's been stagnant, you want to support residential growth and really encourage that particular segment, there's one extra step you can add, which is called an economic development target area. And you could grant property tax abatement on residential, new single-family home development if you so choose to do that. But typically communities are looking at each individual applicant and they're doing it just like we've presented here this evening. So the only document I realized I did not bring was the statement of benefits. It's one page. It shows how much is being invested in the real estate, how much is being invested in the equipment, and then it has the deduction schedule. And it's got the basic company information, the key number of the property, a legal description, and that gets attached to the preliminary and final resolutions. So procedurally, the preliminary resolution comes before you in your first regularly scheduled town council meeting. And then after you adopt the preliminary resolution, during that hearing, you'll schedule a public hearing. And at that point in time, and typically it's the following meeting, as long as you're paying attention to the publication dates, you're then going to set a public hearing, and at that time you'll hold your public hearing and then consider your final resolution right after that public hearing is held. And then so in a 2-meeting process, you can go from the declaration of an ERA, declare the preliminary resolution, set a public hearing date at your following meeting. Then the final resolution is heard at that public hearing, after the public hearing is held at the next meeting. And at that point in time, the final resolution, which then also authorizes the statement of benefits and approves it. So in 2 meetings, it is your traditional tax abatement approval start to finish. And then the applicant's done. They are required from that point forward to file with you the compliance with tax abatement, compliance with the statement of benefits form annually, and then just report back to you how they're doing on, let's say, job creation. Did they make their full investment at the location? did they do everything they said they were going to do in that application that they filled out on day one? So with that, I will hand it over to Matt so he can talk about the much more advanced tool of tax incremental finance, where it's going to give you as a community the ability to really control your destiny and start to consider things like much more significant infrastructure improvements, because we know how important infrastructure is to development these days. With that, I'll hand it over to
Thanks,
Matt.
thanks, Tony. Tony and I know each other a long time. We both worked in the city of Hammond way back when, and we both ended up playing football too. That's kind of funny.
Against each other.
Yeah, in high school. But the name of my company is MCR Partners, and we are consultants for LaPorte County, and specifically in this instance in the redevelopment arena. We provide services to other cities and towns relative to community development and economic development. My background is degree in political science, master's in business administration. Tony left this out, we're both certified economic development finance professionals. What does all that mean? It means we've done and been around a lot of different kind of projects. I work for the city of Hammond. I work for the largest accounting firm in the world. I spent 14 years as working for an engineering company and ran their community economic development department and was partner. So I have and I'm a real estate broker, commercial broker. So I have kind of a broad base of experience from a municipal standpoint to the private sector standpoint. I also work and represent private sector companies when they come and talk to places like Westville. So what we prepared for you today was a sample. And the sheet with the blue shows you and runs you through a deal. I'm just going to kind of back up. So if you want to get really bored, read Indiana Code 6-1.1-12, and that'll tell you all about the deduction for assessed value, which is what happens when you get a tax abatement. It'll show you how to do it and all the steps and the procedures, but I kind of wrote them down for you real quick. You select an area and kind of Tony went through it. I'm just going to leave it up there. When I'm talking with people about it, I say, it's all town, some town, any town, or no town. No town means you're not going to give an abatement, you don't care. There's places like that. Some town is how the LaPorte County operates. So when North Point said, hey, I want to buy this deal, I said, okay, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to spend $18 million, I'm going to put in $8 million, and I'm going to bring in a bunch of equipment. So we do the calculations on a sheet of paper like that, and we determine what and how much benefit comes into the county as a result of the investment. So in that particular instance, we had to designate an area like Tony was talking about. So the area is literally around the boundaries of the building and some other property. And that process we had to go through, as Tony was describing. You have a preliminary resolution, and you set a public hearing, and then you have the final. So concurrent with that, the company is going through this other side process, and they're submitting a statement of benefits in the application, right? So at the end of it all, council says, we agree, they're great, we want them to spend the money, we're willing to allow them a deduction. They do that, and part of the negotiated agreement with the company allowed for the county to get some funds upfront. The statute also allows for 15% savings. So I don't think I included it on the sheet when we were doing the calcs, but the community can glean 15%. Now it's kind of cumbersome and clunky because the auditor's office has to do it and then collect it and then give it back to you. What I do is I just say, well, let's estimate what you're going to save and why you pay us a percentage of that, and that's usually how I do it. So in the instance of North Point, they wrote a check to the county for $48,000, and then we don't have to bother with them anymore. So that's an instance of how tax abatement and real-time worked. What we also were talking about is how it would be set up in the community. So some town, like I said, some town is how the county does it. They just pick areas on the map, and they have a deal that comes to them, and they go through this process. It takes longer, but it's effective, and allows for transparency and public input, and it's mandated in the statute. So you have public hearings. The all-town idea is you designate the whole town as an opportunity for a tax abatement. I'm just going to stick with that terminology. And you have one meeting, and they bring a resolution and a statement of benefits, and company XYZ comes in and says, hey, I want you to consider abatement. They talk to the council says, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to spend, so I'm going to use this as the example. So guy says, I'm going to spend $1.2 million, and I'm going to create 10 jobs, and they're going to pay X amount. And you go, okay, we'll consider that. So in the resolution, it says who it is, what they're going to do. There's some kind of application, the statement of benefits. There's one meeting, council approves the statement of benefits and the resolution, and you're done. Company goes, it breaks ground, and the assessor does their job. They assess the building, the abatement kicks in. Your attorney, whoever that is, files the paperwork with the auditor's office, so they're aware that you have approved an abatement as a town, and they have the information. So that's kind of start to finish how it works, and what Tony was going through. So let's talk about tax abatement or tax increment financing redevelopment opportunities. So
I would just jump in that the last example that Matt's referring to, it doesn't take long before that word gets out of what you've done by you've simplified your process. You're saying we're open for business and we're aggressive about the growth of our community, and so much so that you can come to our community and be approved in one meeting. For a lot of companies, the private sector today, they're looking at time. How quickly can these things be approved? You're making a real aggressive statement. We simplify this process. We're going to get you done quickly in our community. So it's part of building a pro-business atmosphere for your community. It's one thing to consider. I apologize.
No, that's fine. So that, just to close out the abatement portion, you as the authorizing body can say no to anybody for any reason. You can tell them on the back of that form, the statement of benefits, my favorite section is section E that says other. So in there you can write whatever you want. You shall, in addition to, the normal, well, I'll use this as an example that I've seen done before. In addition to the normal landscaping requirements, we want you to do this. And the company can agree to it or not agree to it. You could put on there, and usually that's written into the resolution. And I've done that a couple of times in the past for LaPorte County tax payments that were approved. They wanted other stuff. County council oftentimes says, we want you to utilize LaPorte County businesses. And it goes in there. I'm in favor of that. I'm more partial to using local businesses than struggling with the challenge to identify union companies that can build a building. So from my perspective, if they're local, it's good. If they're union and they're local, that's even better. But I'd like to see local businesses get pulled in, at least an opportunity to bid on the work, right? And that's better for everybody. You got people buying stuff, buying materials from local community, and so on and so forth. So sometimes that's written in there, sometimes it's not. It depends on the community. Let's spend a minute on redevelopment and economic development. So community, a town, a city can establish a redevelopment commission, and they have a purpose in the statute, and that's even more boring and more lengthy, 36.714, which tells you all about redevelopment commissions, who appoints who, what you do, what your requirements are. I'm going to go on the assumption that what we're going to talk about today is that was created. There's an entity. So there is the group that I've worked with in the county the most is the LaPorte County Redevelopment Commission. Now, we have 3 economic development areas, which are different from this, right? Not the abatement area. They're redevelopment and economic development areas, and that's what is called out in the statute. So the 3 areas we have in the county are 421 and 94. Basically, it's the whole interchange. We have 39 North, which is the toll road, and 39 takes in the golf course, and then Praxair and all that stuff along that corridor. And the third is Kingsbury Industrial Park in its entirety, and the whole 8,000 plus or minus acres. So there's 3 areas that were identified. So I'm just going to walk through the process. You select an area, and then you either hire somebody or you do it yourself, you develop a plan, and the statute, it tells you what to do. Just to summarize it, you need to have a map, you need to have the properties identified, you need to show the base assessed value, so you get a spreadsheet. And thankfully now that's a lot easier today than it was 25 years ago. Now I just call the assessor and say, here's the map. They call all the information on a spreadsheet, so now I got it all done. So it's pretty easy when years and long time ago was really a rigorous task. So you create this base assessed value. Let's say for argument's sake, it's $100. Right? Let's use that. So you know what the base is, and so you have an idea, I want to spend X dollars on a road, or X dollars on a waterway, or X dollars to a business guy. I want to help them. So you put it in your plan. You say, this is what our plan is. And what I advise clients to do is, in that plan, unless it is for a specific project, like a named project, we call that, you want to utilize the flexibility in the statute to the benefit of the community, meaning just be flexible. Because there's a lot of things that you can do within that statute. As I mentioned, you can use it for roads and streets. You can use it for to incent a private company directly. You can do private activity bonds. You can do all these things in that statute. So why do communities do that? And I guess the best example I have, and I got the clerk treasurer here, so you get the whole dollar instead of the percentage your community gets. So I didn't look to calculate what the town of Westville's portion of the tax dollar is. Let's say it's 40%. Do you know what it is on top of your head? Okay. You get the whole dollar instead of the 40 cents. The thing is in that area, that's where you have to spend the money. So there's some requirements associated with that. So I always ask, do you want the dollar or do you want the 40 cents? Now, when you take the dollar, the argument is, well, you're having a negative impact on the other taxing units. And what I've heard, heard from different places, and it's been litigated, that it has a negative impact on school corporations. And I say, no, actually it doesn't, because the project wouldn't happen if I didn't do this. So you're arguing over money you don't have today. And with the changes in the legislation that have occurred with the enactment of the sales tax increase and the 1, 2, 3 property tax caps, the impact of the schools is dramatically decreased because of the dependency on local property tax dollars to run a school, right? So the state of Indiana is supposed to be the one writing checks, the per student fund to fund schools, right? So however they're going to figure out the best way to do that formula, in my opinion, they need to fix it. They need to do that. So as long as your schools don't have a bunch of debt, hopefully they don't, setting up a TIF really has absolutely no impact. So there's certain types of funds that are, in theory, impacted by setting up a TIF district. There are cumulative capital funds that are based on the total assessed valuation of the community. So when you set up a TIF, you're carving out a piece of that. So in theory, you're taking away of potential revenue that could come to everybody, the state, county, the township, the library, school board, and so on. And that's the argument for it. Except in the statute says, but for the use of this incentive, the project wouldn't happen. So again, I always say, you're arguing over money you don't have today that you don't even know that you would have in the future. It's like, why am I doing that? So back to those two examples I gave you. So if you look at those two forms together, one of them's the tax abatement. It's the same dollar amount, all right? So the example one with the blue is the tax abatement, and it's the same deal, all right? And then if you go to the bond sheet, so what I did was, and you probably wouldn't do a bond this small, but I just used the same assessment so you could see how the two different things flow. So if I'm going to do this redevelopment district, economic development district, I have to go through these local processes, and I have to hold a public hearing. I have to run it by the plan commission. It has to be consistent with current town plans to be approved. Now, in this whole mess, you can create what's called an allocation area. And that's the money trigger. That's when you start collecting money. Because you can have a plan area and you can set it up and never turn the switch on. So the town of Highland, speaking of Michael Griffin, did that for years. They had this area set up, and in their plan documents, they had an economic development area set up, and they never flipped the switch and created the allocation area. So this giant mall gets built, and after a while, the town's going, well, why are we not collecting any more of that increment? Because what they found was that because we had this big development, we now have a bunch more traffic, and we now found that the cost of our streets and roads and police is going up, so hey, we should get that extra, so they flipped the switch and turned it on. It wasn't until after a lot of it was built. But in and around that segment, you saw more growth and development happen as a result of their ability to utilize those funds for better streets, better roads, better drainage, better stormwater retention, and so on. So, back to your example. It's what that project does is generate $250,000 worth of bonds. So what you see is just basically like our mortgages or your house mortgage, or it's a loan amount and an interest rate. And the thing about tax increment finance debt is that depending on who it is, they're going to say the interest rate is higher or lower. And this is, again, I guess just to like use your house. If you got great credit, your interest rate's really low. If you got crappy credit, your interest rate goes up. The longer the term on the loan, the higher the interest rate. The shorter the term on the loan, the lower the interest rate. So in the example I gave you, I took a middle of the road. I took 5%, which is pretty high for a normal redevelopment commission bond. I would say that you'd probably be around 3.5%. Okay. I also provided there, for a bond that size, you can never go that far, but based on the increment that comes in, all right, that's the tax dollars that project, what they call it, Project Chew Toy pays. So the most they're paying every year is $21,817. I'm collecting all that for 25 years. I'm throwing it in the bank, and it gets collected and remitted to the person who becomes, or entity who becomes the bond buyer. So there's two types of bond buyers. There's the private market, and when I'm doing a bigger project, it'll go out to the private market. And I'm doing a $10 million bond deal. I'm working with the underwriter and the financial advisor from the community, and says, we understand this is the revenue stream. They go through the analysis of the tax increment that's coming in. You put together a big, fat, costly prospectus, offering statement they're called, and it tells the story about the bond deal, and then it's offered in the market. And then you have a negotiated purchase. And hopefully it's a good enough deal where you got people bidding against each other. So one of the projects not too long ago I did was in Munster, and it was a public sale. And we were able to get a pretty decent interest rate for a private activity bond. It was a little less than 5%. And that was because we took it to the market. But the other kind of bond is where, and this is my favorite, and I tell the deal person, I want you to buy your own bonds. And they don't, a lot of times they don't like that. I mean, I know I don't like it when I'm on the other side and the community says, Matt, you need to buy your own bonds. But in a real life example, I don't know how, if you followed, there's a big data center project that's going up in Hammond. That's one of my projects, okay? And a lot of familiarity with good people at Hammond, and the mayor is great, and I know him and Kevin Smith and everybody, we all know each other. And it's part of my deal, and my client says I want a TIF, and I want $10 million. I'm like, all right, let me go ask. And they said, sure, Matt. You can have $10 million for the data center if you guys buy the bonds. So what does that mean? We have to come out of pocket $10 million. So a couple things happen when that happens. You can be sure that we're going to build a project, because if we don't, there's no taxes collected, and we don't get our $10 million back, right? The other thing it does is, along with making sure the project gets built, it allows the owner, in this instance me and others, to come out of pocket the $10 million, right, to build the project. And by the way, it was only a portion of the total. I mean, the total project was 35 million. 10 million was the maximum amount of bonds we could get from the taxes we pay. It allows us, after the building's built and after the building's full, to sell those bonds to somebody else. So what did it do for Hammond? It completely shielded them from any risk. So they're like, hey guys, I really hope you do it. If you don't, well, congratulations, you got a half-built building on Lake Michigan, and it's not a data center, so it's not a financial strain in any way to the community. So that's why I like when that happens. The other way, when you go to the marketplace, oftentimes the market wants you to have a credit enhancement. And what I did in the bond calcs is an example of that. So instead of being one-to-one, like I borrowed the dollar, it's simple interest, and I pay back, I have what's called a coverage ratio. And I just did that pretty quickly. So I think I have 124, I didn't mean to do that. I meant it to be 125, but I got tired of messing around with the bond amounts in the calcs. So you can have 125% coverage, which is usually the minimum. What does that say? I know that every year they're going to pay more taxes, they're going to be collected, and there's a fund that's going to get built up, okay? And you see that on the far right column. So there's X dollars at the end of all this that ends up in the community's pile. I've seen 125, I've seen 150% coverage, and then Munster, where I live, their bonds are 200% coverage. Why? I have no idea. It's insane, but that makes it pretty sellable, right? So they're able to sell the bonds. So you build in these credit enhancements to make it attractive in the market. But when, like, I buy the bonds or Tony buys the bonds, now we're just negotiating. So I say, look, I'm not going to pay 4% interest. I want 8, because I know I'm going to get more from the property taxes. I want 25 years or I want 20 years and you want me to do 18, I'm not going to do that. So you have some flexibility when you're negotiating back and forth. But anyway, that's, sorry to cram all this into,
It's a lot to take in.
20-minute discussion, but
Question.
no, the starting point is, do you want to use it? If you do, great. If you don't, that's okay. The town of Hebron is another client of mine. They have a TIF district. They have a modest collection. There's programs that they set up, and they haven't done any bonds. And you can do that too, as a redevelopment commission. So remember, I was talking about the dollar or the 40 cents. This is where that comes into play more so. So you get to keep the whole dollar. And their TIF district is basically 2. The whole kind of down 2 and 8, that area, right? So they collect that money, and what they do with it is they have a debt that they share with the fire department, and they pay some debt service for a fire truck bond that they bought. So it's like 57 grand a year they kick in. This is a redevelopment commission. Why? Because fire trucks serve the district. If there's a fire there, they got to put it out, and so on, so it's eligible. The other things that they do is they give a facade rebate program, so your existing business space, they come in and they say, I want to fix the outside of my building. Okay, great. They match up to 50%. Most recently, it was the first time the redevelopment commission did that there, is they had a company, or a local guy come in, actually a town councilman from Griffith, of all places, comes in and says he wants to buy this bowling alley and the property in front of it, and this guy's going to spend $600,000, which is a lot of dough. And he says, hey, look, can you help me out with the facade? So the redevelopment commission normally wouldn't go that high, but in this instance, because he was going to invest $600,000 at a minimum, they awarded him $75,000, and that also came out of their TIF fund. So that's kind of part of the reasons why you can, some of the tools when you set up a redevelopment commission, that's what happens. It doesn't have to be super complicated either. I mean, I gave you, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I gave an example of an 8 of complication. I mean, there's redevelopment commissions, you set the base year, the base is 100, the next year you get 120, $20 goes to the redevelopment commission, the $100 goes to the overlapping taxing districts. Next year, if you get 30, and so on and so on and so on. The council also has, and the redevelopment commission also have an option to let the money go back through to the taxing districts. And if you can believe that, it actually happens. in one place that I know of, in Whiting. Because when BP spent $3.8 billion, Whiting had so much money in their TIF district, they're like, I can't even spend all this. So they let it go back to the other districts. So the state, whatever minimum amount, county, township, library, school, they all got whatever they got. So that's an option. And in fact, the redevelopment commissions are required annually to make that decision. Hey, I don't want to use the money, so I want to give it back, so there's an option. But when you're doing your plan document, there needs to be some things that you have an idea of what you want to do. So we're working on a new TIF district in LaPorte County at 35 and 94. Now, what is that? The Serenity Springs is there and some other stuff, right? A lot of wooded area, but what's behind the wooded area is property that's adjacent to the Michigan City Airport right? So a developer approached us and said, you know, I really think I want to do a project over there. Well, what kind of project? I don't know, like $25 million. I'm like, okay, now you got my attention. He says, but I don't have adequate water and sewer to get to the site, and I don't have good road access. Now, I think it's a better way for me to go to the redevelopment commission with a plan and say, here's the plan area, here's this one deal, he's in the bigger area, okay? This guy says he's gonna spend $25 million. Now, what do you want to do? He needs to get water and sewer. So part of this plan document exercise is that we calculate with my engineering partner company, what does that cost to get there? You know, how much is the water, how much is sewer? So we work with Michigan City Water and Sanitary. Hey, how much is it going to cost to get there? So we get a number. How much does the road cost? Cost that. So the company says, all right, well, we're interested in seeing that happen. And I said, I'm interested in you spending $25 million. So you figure out how much would that project generate in bonds? How much could it? And then that information is given to the redevelopment commission. Hey, here's what this could have. This is the maximum amount. Now, do you have an interest in doing the maximum? Yes or no? Do you have an interest in doing a percentage? So that's a project that we're working on right now. And do I think it's a good idea to draw TIF districts around interchanges? I do. I wish the state would allow us to use sales tax at those particular locations because we see a lot of gas stations and retail that pop up there, but they don't. So it's all still property tax based. And one other example I'm going to give you, it's a live project that we're doing right now. It's a TIF bond. And it has to do with an existing TIF district at 421 and 94. So you're familiar with the dump, the closed landfill. A private developer bought the property adjacent to the landfill on the southeast-west side. And it's about 45 acres. So part of it's wetlands, part of it's not. And a developer came to the county and said, I want to build an $18 million service center. Well, I mean, I guess, you think about a gas station, you don't get very excited, but I'm thinking about $18 million worth of investment. I'm like, well, you know, that's a lot of money. And who am I to say, you know, the handful of jobs or 25 or 30 jobs they're going to create there, you know, people don't want to work on. I mean, the problem with that site is the same problem we had when I drafted the redevelopment plan is there's no sewer and water on the south side. There's some limited access to water. But there's no sanitary. So part of that exercise included identifying, designing, procuring right-of-way to put a water and sanitary underneath 8094 to service that whole territory. So we didn't just run the size and scope of the sanitary and water for that one deal. We ran it with the acknowledgement that there is at least 1,000 acres of other developable property on 421 that we can develop. So size it accordingly. So the lift stations are bigger than we normally would. Now, here's where the decision making and the overlap comes in. The company says, I have a problem. So what's your problem? We have an issue with the pipeline. So they're negotiating with TransCanada. So I mean, let me get to the point. It stopped the project. Right? They're like, we can't guarantee that we're going to do this and spend $18 million, which means I can't work with the financial advisor in the bond market to say, okay, this is that tax at 3%, so 15 million times 3% times whatever number of years is the number of bonds of the revenue. Now, in that TIF district, there's other stuff that happened. So annually in the district, there's a couple things that go on. One, there's one bond that's issued and for a specific project, bless you. It's for IU Health. And they have their own bond, and that was bought by the developer. I'm like, great. Works fine, great, that's separate. Then there's the other money. Remember I was telling you about the whole dollars scenario? That keeps piling up. So we have some money to do, and the project's about $3 million. We have some money to do that, but we have to do a bond deal. And then it gets tied back to the increase in assessed value that would be generated by the service station man. So what did that do? I got the directive from the county council that said, we're not going to give you any more money for that. I said, okay. And the redevelopment commission said, well, we are not going to try and issue bonds because they're not going to be marketable because we don't have a certain deal. And we're not going to pledge what's called a corporate pledge. And that's a pledge of the community that if you don't collect the revenue, that all the taxpayers pay, which is not any way to do anything. Believe it, it happens. So we're at a standstill. So what does all that mean? I guess it means this, that as council people, you have ultimate flexibility if you want to use the tools. Most of your surrounding communities do some level of either tax abatement or TIF. Or it's handy to have available if you have the right project. People like me that work for the private sector guys will probably ask you, hey, what do you guys got going on? You know, the thing that I found about LaPorte County and different than other places is your tax rates are really darn low, pretty low in comparison to other places. I mean, I know when I'm doing anything in Lake and Porter County, it's 3% for commercial, and it's got to be 3%. That's what I'm going to pay. That's better than what it used to be when it was 5 or 8 or whatever. So that's something to consider when you're like, man, should we give an abatement? Is it really that much? Is it really going to have that benefit? And then just to summarize, you know, what I ask companies that are coming in, what's important to you, capital cost or operating cost savings? So operating cost is relative to abatement, capital cost is relative to TIF. And when I tell them, yeah, we're interested in doing a TIF bond if you buy it. So that really smokes people out. They'll say, And then usually they say, what does that mean? I said, that means you have to get the money. And then you have to explain the whole situation to them. And their banker calls you and it's like, what do you mean I got to give you the money? I'm like, yeah, this is how this works. So, you know, like I said, I always caution my clients, you know, ask for what you want. It'd be direct with the client, with the prospect. Most people appreciate that. We'll do this if you do this, and hold their feet to the fire. The last thing that people want to see is a lot of hemming and hawing about should we do this or should we not. And that's really a recipe to have somebody move down the road. And I've seen that happen. I've done it to places. Like when I can't make a decision, I'm like, we're out. Gotta go. So anyway, thanks a lot for your time. I hope I didn't bore you to tears yet. You guys are like nodding off. Well, we didn't eat before this. But we're here to answer any questions that you might
TIF
have.
probably sounds complex and complicated, but the reality is it's not once you get into it. Probably the most painful part is hiring bond counsel because they're an expensive part of the equation, but they without them you can't get anything done whatsoever. Bond counsel is going to be your as elected leaders, they're the one that waves the wand to say this all meets the state of Indiana's legal test, and it is being done for the exactly why it was approved by the state legislature. In other words, this community is followed all the correct processes to approve this and get growth occurring within their community. So bond counsel is a very important step in that process. I drew this here, just to really boil it down to the real basics. You declare your boundary, which is the district, which is declared. Matt talked about the allocation area. Typically that mirrors the TIF boundary. A plan is written, an economic development plan is written where you're going to specify this This plan is to encourage the growth of not less than 6 new structures. You know, those are identified in green. The projected new assessed value is $5 million. The date that you adopt your TIF district and set up your redevelopment commission, or determine your allocation area, the assessed value, let's say that it's right now it's all agricultural farm field, and it carries an assessed value of $1,000, it's frozen. Matt referred to that number being you're collecting now the whole dollar. And this is what makes it so beautiful for locals is what used to go, a majority of that dollar going to the county, to the state, to all the other taxing units, you're going to receive 100% of that directly to your redevelopment commission's coffers, the new increment. And it's being done to facilitate things like bond repayment for road, sewer, water. And it's to get that, at the end of, let's say that it was financed, if a bond was financed over a 20-year period and you pay it off early, paid off in 15 for some reason, because of a lot of new additional growth, you have the ability to return that to the general tax rolls, which is going to, again, you're going to put a lot of new tax assessed value, a new assessed value on the tax rolls. It's going to effectively lower your tax rates again. And you achieved everything you set your mind to when you started the process. So you're taking control of your own destiny, and it's giving you the tools to do that.
Question, Tony, you're talking about when the money starts coming in, that the redevelopment fund is going to be getting. When does it actually go to general fund? At what point in this process will the general fund start seeing an increase?
When you dissolve the district.
I see.
Yep, typically when it's met its obligation,
Okay.
when it was.
So say you gave them 10 years,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
then after the 10 years, then all that starts going into the,
Goes back to the overlapping tax jurisdiction. So the dollar gets split up however the budget was laid out.
so it'd be beneficial to have more than one event going on at the same time.
It would
Sure,
be
sure.
beneficial to have more than one.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you
Which
this.
is kind of going back to that point of generating that pro-business attitude
Yeah.
and you're marketing your community. Part of the reason that Matt and I are sitting here this evening is LaPorte County and the county commissioners and the redevelopment commission have said, we need to get organized, we need to get serious about if we're going to be a healthy community tomorrow and we're going to grow broadband and we're going to prepare this community for the next generation, you've got to have that infrastructure that's going to support tomorrow's economy. We're going to have the fiber optic infrastructure. Those things cost money because the private sector is obviously not stepping up to do all of it by itself. They'll cherry pick the good stuff, but these other things are going to cost money. If we prepare correctly and we get aggressive about this marketing, the point being, the reason we're sitting here is the county has said, get out to the communities, work with them, make sure they know these tools exist, and help them get started. Now, we're not trying to step on any of your legal counsel's toes because we want to work with them, but we're here to help educate, work with you, bring qualified leads to you when we can, and help you determine your destiny.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to.
So like when Doug Beachy was the commission attorney, or the council attorney, anyway, he's the one working through the tax abatements. And then even before when he was on with the, way back, he was the commission attorney. He's the one working with the TIF districts and making sure the documents are correct. As an example, so there's a close relationship that happens between your council and.
It makes sense. It makes sense that the communities and the county work together.
Sure does.
It makes a lot of sense, because what happens in South County is going to affect north part of the county and vice versa.
Absolutely.
We're all in this together.
So one of the things I always argue about is, people get parochial. They're like, well, that's in Westville, or that's in
Yeah.
Michigan City.
Yeah,
But that's there, I'm
traditions.
like, hey, here's some news. That's in LaPorte County.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that counts.
Get
So
beyond
when-
the turf.
Yeah, when you're, why is that going to Michigan City? I don't care. It's in the county, you. So I always argue, and people are like,
Now, we're looking at 10 years for this abatement. Has there been anything that has been proven less than 10 years that's been very effective, maybe 5? Is that effective?
It's all across the map,
Okay.
quite frankly.
Okay.
you have the right to pick the level of assessed value you want to abate. So you could tell them, I'm only going to abate half, and I'm only going to give it for 5 years, or 2 years, or 1 year. You could give 100. I had a request from a company that said they wanted 100% abatement for 10 years. Now, what do you think the community told me to tell them? We don't think so, but thanks a lot. How about we do this? How about we give you a graduated benefit? But yeah, you have the ability to pick a number of years, and it didn't used to be like that. It used to be for real estate, it was 3, 5, or 10, that was in the statute, and for equipment, it was 5 or 10.
Let's talk about the residential. My ear sort of perked up when you said that. What does that look like?
You take that one extra step of declaring the area an economic development target area.
Okay.
You also have to meet the statute's finding of fact that things have either slowed down or stagnated, or be due to much higher than average infrastructure costs. Developers they're not stepping up to do this development on their own. We need to help incent that to get it going. So you take that extra step to declare the target area, and then the process is identical to doing a commercial tax abatement.
Okay.
So
Simple.
they did that in Hobart years back when Lynn Buzanic was the mayor. They wanted more population. So on, I don't know, it's like the east side of Hobart, they picked a map, and it was a cornfield, and said, we're gonna give tax abatement to people who buy these houses. They did 5-year abatements, and that was the most they did. And there's a special schedule for residential to do so. And their goal was we want more population.
Were these high-end homes, or were they moderate?
You know, they were market rate. It wasn't a government subsidized anything. It was a market rate.
So this could be a residential area with high-end homes that we're going after.
Yeah, you can do that. So what we're doing right now
You determine.
in Hebron is they have a desire to use TIF for residential. Now, this is relatively new. And, you know, somewhat complicated in that the cost of service is higher for residents than it is for a business. I mean, Chief, you know, you got, how many calls do you get to go, to a business, or, not many, but you get a call to go to a house. So there's an increase in cost of service, and it's about $1.30 per dollar. So you always want to watch what you're trying to do over there.
They're going to have children in those homes. Those children need to be educated. So when you bring industry in, if this $4.9 million of new assessed value, let's say all of these companies baked bread, not 1 cent a child to school, so the cost of education and all stayed the same, but you've got all this new free cash flow coming into your TIF district, and no one calling for, no calls on the police and fire and all those kinds of things. So Matt's referencing the increase in service costs. Residential is the most costly, but at the same time, that's what builds a community. That's what grows the community, creates a new fabric, grows the economy. Along with that might come the entrepreneurs that then set up additional businesses, and it's really about and I know that you mentioned Doug, you guys are going to be mirroring your comprehensive plan and your zoning ordinance to the county zoning ordinance. Those are all things that make a lot of sense, because then everyone's talking the same language.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It does, and the key is that building that the perception becomes reality. If you start sending out a message of we're open for business and we're creating a pro-business attitude, it doesn't take long for that word to get out, and you're going to have people knocking on your door. Hey, where can we be? Where's the sewer and water today?
So that's the other
Look at
thing,
investing.
the advantage this town has, you have sewer and water. That's like Hebron, they have sewer and water, I'm like, why don't you guys have any houses out here? And they're like, we're asking the same question, so their town council's like, you know what, let's look into residential too. So that's like a whole different animal, that's where we're working with developers and they're into buying bonds and we're putting in roads into developments and almost front funding some of the type of housing that's established, and that's, I don't know how that's gonna turn out, I honestly don't. I mean, we're gonna go through with that effort, but until somebody comes in, a developer, and says, I wanna build a 200-unit subdivision, we're not gonna do anything, you know what I'm saying? With the abatement, on the other hand,
It's
you
labor
don't
intensive,
need,
one home at a time, I would imagine.
you know, it's great if you can get one developer, but that welcomes any developer that wants to buy a lot in the subdivision and build it, and the person who buys the house gets the abatement, you know, on that. So it's, I mean, it worked in Hobart. It did exactly what they wanted to have happen. Now, was that because of other factors? Maybe so, but, you know, I remember at the end of 61st, it was like a pig in a poke back there, was nothing. And now you see all that growth, it goes all the way down. And that was the area that they abated. So they were single-family homes.
I think it makes sense to look in that direction. I really do. Because that's the first thing you want to do is grow your population.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be, we're not going to be seeing the income for a while, but the cash flow, but it's coming.
Right. 10 years, it's, at the age of 53, I can't believe I'm 53 years old, you snap your fingers, there's another 10 years. So they come on to the tax rolls quickly. It just brings back memories. We were the first to do residential tax abatement in the city of Hammond. They had built the redevelopment commission built some subdivisions, growth had stagnated, and the mayor said, we've got to get that kick-started and let's fill it up. We approved, declared the ERA, declared the target area designation, and it filled up. It filled up quickly. Hobart saw that, said, how'd you do it? We gave them the resolutions. They mirrored it. They did the exact same thing. And you want to be transparent, because what you don't want is 5 years in, a homeowner saying, you know, I've been sold a bill of goods. My tax rate's going up every year. You want to be upfront and say, look, this is being done on a graduated tax relief. Here's what it's going to be when you're fully taxable. Don't think anything otherwise. Because it's not about hiding anything, but that's real money. It's real savings. And it could help them. Maybe it was going to be a vinyl sided home. Maybe they can now, because of the abatement, they can afford a brick exterior, or upgrade the quality of the some of the, you know, the features of the home. Or really, it's kind of what you determine, and it's about how much control do you want to take over setting your future destiny.
One of the things in the comprehensive plan that was recommended was more high-end homes.
Yeah. There is truly a shortage right now.
Do you have a subdivision?
Market rate housing.
Is there a platted subdivision to do that?
I don't think that, I don't know of any, but I don't think it would be hard to find somebody that would.
I mean, that's like step one, have a platted subdivision and get with the landowner
Yeah.
to say, hey, here's what we want to market. What is it going to take? And that's where this discussion about, hey, you know, maybe we can do an abatement here.
What is your thought on, I know they've changed the annexation laws. What's your thinking on annexation for communities today?
Well, I mean, every time I've seen it, and if it's not voluntary, it is not a pleasant experience for all parties
Well,
concerned.
it's a long drawn-out experience when it's friendly, I know.
Yeah, and you know, the experience, like the stuff in Tri-Town and Lake County is just like a bloodbath. You know, the thing about annexation that I tell people now is, listen, I don't care where you're at. The most you can pay is 1% of the assessed value for your house. That's it. Now, if you live in a community that has done a referendum for schools, you're going to pay for that, okay? So you know what your destiny is anymore in Indiana. It's not a mystery. So all that, I don't want to be annexed because I'm going to pay a higher tax rate. It's really a bunch of BS, all right? But it's used oftentimes, and I heard all about it, outside of St. John, because I tell you what, those people out there, they don't have sewer and water, right? And so in that instance, Lake County continues to allow developers to do well in septic. I'm like, what are you doing? Stop doing that. So it's usually worth a friendly try first. I mean, you guys, I don't know where your water and sanitary boundaries are here. I don't know if you overlap or you intersect with it, because the county has a LaPorte County's sewer
Soil
district.
water conservation.
So they have their own area, so I don't know if you guys can extend beyond boundary, but that's a good, that's like the best, that's like the starting point. And then you get into what's the cost of service, and you guys are involved, and you go through all those machinations, but was it worth it? I mean, I would say unless, if you have areas to grow in town, do that. You got a water plant, so man, you are miles ahead of a lot of places. Miles.
We built the water plant in 1999, we started on it. And there was like 360 customers in Westville. And within 5 years, subdivision behind McDonald's, Purdue North Central hooked in. It's a conservancy district. We have 650 customers now. We dropped our water rates 21%. We had to raise them to build everything.
And now I had a lengthy conversation with the gentleman, what's his name again?
Steve Turner.
Steve Turner. Wow, is he knowledgeable, and spoke very eloquently to me about how Purdue had made that conscious decision. Do they reinvest on their own and just upgrade their water and sewer, or do we think to the future and partner with the community and upgrade it jointly with them? Smartest decision both the community and the university made was to work together.
Well,
the key is add users and those rates go down.
and
Once you start adding users,
who wants to be in the sewer business?
exactly, nobody does, but they
There's no money in
want
that.
sewer.
There's money in the water business, though.
Yeah.
Indiana American Water can probably tell you that.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of, City of Hammond can tell you. They sell water to all kinds of communities in Illinois. The water in Hammond and Munster is unbelievably cheap because they sell all that water and they're in the same district. It's crazy. When I hear about like the rates in Valpo and Chesterton, I'm like, you're getting robbed. But, that's just the way it is.
The rates are so low in the city of Hammond.
But you're-
Much like Michigan City.
Yeah, I mean, your
Water
advantage
rates
is
are-
you have those utilities available to do development. And, I haven't looked at the county comprehensive plan. I don't know what it says around, Westville. I don't know. I mean, anytime I'm writing a plan, it says capitalize on the existing infrastructure, which means your directive is to build off of the edge of each community and stop allowing for well and septic to be built in the middle of nowhere because Farmer Joe decides now's the day he wants to sell his farm. That needs to stop. I preach that everywhere I go. Like, stop allowing that to happen. Because it forces people to consider locating adjacent to where the utilities are. Because it's better for everybody if you're using, it's easier to get water from a water plant than it is from the ground. And it's easier to do municipal septic or municipal sanitary than septic. It's just easier and cleaner and better for everybody.
Well, Fieldstone has that uniqueness
Yeah.
about it, that they have our sewer, when you go into the subdivision, on the east is water and their water is as well and
Will and
septic.
septic.
And on the west is town, and we had it right there. And we talked to, at that time, we talked to the county and told them, please, we can do this. We have the capacity to do that, but the county gave them permits to do the,
Well, another 10 years and their septics fail.
Yeah, there's
They
nothing
have
better.
nowhere to put them.
Yeah, there's
Because
nothing
they're too
better.
close to their well and the neighbors.
Yeah,
It would
drink
just-
it out of one hole in the backyard and go to the bathroom in the other. It sounds great. That's what ends up happening.
and we kind of wish that
Did
hadn't
they
happened.
just shut off discussions? Is that what it was?
Well, it was done before we know it. It was all done behind our back, and then we were told, and I thought, that's
So-
interesting. Well, it's like Dollar Store, Dollar General is on Wetland, I think.
No, they're the Conservancy.
No,
How
they're
they
the
got-
Conservancy,
They
yeah,
got
that's right.
that one by, I don't know.
Yeah. they
So
put
the
the
one on
Conservancy.
421, the new one they just built up
Yeah, which we get revenue from
Yeah.
it. Anyway.
That's good. So we got
Which side of 421 is your water and sewer on? Is it on the east or the west side?
We don't have water going up there,
Sewer's on the
east
east
side.
side.
Yeah.
Conservancy hydrant, you'll see there on the
Sewer's
west
the,
side.
I mean, not that water's not, or it's not inexpensive by any means, but sewers typically, along with the sewer comes the treatment issue and the more expensive, costly
And it's getting more
Procedure.
and more expensive every day with all.
Requirements.
everything is. And I tell you, we need
Not
resolution
property
to trade
taxes.
policies. There's a lot of things that
They're
need to
going
get
down.
wrapped up.
Now, I got a question. I know your levy is frozen, basically.
Yep.
3% a year if you're lucky. Circuit breaker knocks that down usually. So obviously, if you can double the assessed valuation of your town, let's say everybody's rate is going to drop in half, you're still going to bring in the same amount of money, well, maybe a little more because nobody's circuit breaker's kicking in.
Right.
So if we build, if they come in and let's say they do the tax abatement, at the end of that 10 years, period, he's paying more taxes, but we're not bringing in, well, we're bringing in more money just because of the time and years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but during that time, if he's got a $1 million building sitting there, we're not getting money off that assessed valuation. The rate's not dropping because of that.
Well, each
But are
year,
we taking a cut in year one because we're not getting revenue on that, or is it figured
Year
like,
two.
it's just like or year two, is it figured just like it's vacant land and they're paying
Right,
taxes? So
exactly.
we're not, our levy isn't gonna drop.
No, right, so
See
that's.
what I mean?
I do. And so what ends up happening, like, let's use the Baden deal. So the guy goes out and buys 5 acres and says, I'm gonna build a 6,200 square foot building, costs $1.3 million. Great. What's the assessment on the dirt? The dirt I bought was, I don't know, it was ag land, so it was
Let's say it was
$13.50 an acre times whatever, 6. And that's it. So it's already assessed at that. You're not abating that, you're abating improvement only.
Okay, I got
So
you.
you get locked in and you get that. So now, Joe Blow builds whatever, and they have personal property, you're taxing that too. So you get that, which is new, right? So you're looking at like how much personal property, and it kind of adds up depending on what it is, right? If it's a medical user, I mean, they got, I don't know, those pieces of equipment are,
Sure.
it might be $2 million worth of stuff. I mean, that's why.
And they're updating all the time.
Right. So, I mean, like, you might have looked at me kind of, thought it was kind of odd that IU Health got a deal in a TIF deal, but it was like a $6 million project by the time they were done. The building wasn't, I know it was like $1.2 million or $5 million, whatever. But the equipment inside the building was big go. And it continues to be. And then you throw the jobs in there, what happened, and I don't know, create 20, 30 jobs, and you're like, suddenly, I got 30 new people that are making 75, 85 grand a year, that are working in this joint, so I'm all for it, so.
I guess if you're looking at it, and you take out TIF, it's just an abatement that you're considering as policy. Each year, that clerk treasurer's looking at new AV incrementally.
Right.
There's new AV, which is increasing your assessed value every year.
Right. But your rate is
Even with
not.
the abatement, and so it's having downward pressure on your rate.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what it's
I mean,
doing.
Vince
Each year.
Daniels
You
designed,
really want to see as much growth, as much new increment as you can each year, because it's kind of an insurance policy for you as a community, and keeping your rates low.
Yeah. See, the problem we have as
Tax rate's low.
as a community is where that subdivision is behind McDonald's.
Yes.
That was annexed, it was farmland.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we got extra revenue because it was something we brought in. But once they built houses on it, it just dropped the rate. It didn't bring in more. And the problem is, communities have, and I think Hobart was an example when they annexed the mall.
yes.
They had expenses right away and they weren't gonna see money for a year for that. They had to build a fire station and all that.
Yeah, they did.
But like, the problem we have is if if you want to assess something, you're better to assess it when it's a full-blown subdivision that's done than when it's land. The only kicker to that is, though, when you've got 50 houses there, you've got 50 people that are going to fight you tooth and nail to get it annexed. You have better luck annexing empty land.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then, but when those 50 houses get here, those guys, we're gonna have to add a couple more people because they're getting,
You're putting a load onto your school district.
Well, that's, the- you
Yeah.
know, that's
You've
the
got
other thing.
how many more children to educate as well?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, they're all getting paid by the head, that's why they're.
Right,
busting
so,
kids
I
in
mean,
from
like you
Michigan
said,
City.
you know,
Correct.
Mitch
So-
Daniels was diabolical in the way he set this 1, 2, 3 cap. It limited the ability of jurisdictions to fluctuate the rate, number one. It's forcing without enabling local communities to increase your taxes. So you have to feed people to death. Building fee, water fee, this fee. But from the consumer standpoint, hey, the most I can ever pay is 3% if I'm a commercial or a manufacturer in the state of Indiana. That's awesome. I could figure that out. It's sustainable. Okay, great. Or I'm going to buy a house. And I use this all the time.
max is. You know where the worst it can be. And I mean, it's the flip side of what people in Illinois wish they had.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
No doubt.
Because there's no end in sight to the cost and increase in fees, or I mean, in
Cost
raw
of fees.
tax,
Right.
all of it.
So, I mean, it works against the jurisdictions, but it works for the consumer. And that's really the easiest way to explain it, because it really does put constraints on the community. As you were mentioning, the more stuff I get, the lower the more pressure I put down on my rate. I mean, I think 1% is not enough anyway. I mean, at a minimum, it should have been something that was analyzed on an annual basis and put into practice where they recognize what's the average cost of service. And that becomes the residential rate. But they didn't do it that way. It was because it's easy, 1, 2, 3, right?
It's
So-
residential, commercial, and industrial.
Residential, rental, and business.
Some
So,
business, okay, so that's the 1, 2, 3.
so I mean, do you get more revenue? Yeah, you
The better
can.
you're doing, the more you're penalized, isn't it?
Well, that's why I said, you start feeing people to death. I mean, that's what's going on. Or you go out for a referendum, which is elected officials, that's good times. People love that.
That's almost as good as annexing.
Yeah, that's
That's what they have.
Well, at least you're annexing.
You're handing out
At least you're
maps.
pissing off people that are not in town yet, so they can't not vote for you. They're still out of the community, but it's,
That's a good idea for the next, someone with a record. Hand out the mini bats.
Oh,
We're voluntarily stepping into this for you to beat us up. Here's
I've
a
often
bat
thought
to make it
times and
easy.
mentioned that we need to cut the trees down because they're gonna be hanging us from them. so-
Oh, yeah, you get it.
Right.
It's, you know, people sometimes don't realize that, these local decisions that get made in the tax dollars, there's just frankly not enough to go around. And I'm not, look, I'm by no means any kind of spendthrift, believe me. But I do recognize that when you have a substantial residential area, it costs money. And people demand good to have good service, and they demand to be able to go somewhere with their kids. So that's, it's like pick something you don't want to have, and we'll do it. I mean, thankfully for LaPorte County and Porter County and, well, the other 91 counties, 90 counties, you guys have been living with the property tax caps for 10 years. Lake County has not. So imagine if somebody came to you guys and said, hey, I got some good news for everybody that lives in town. Your taxes are going down. I got some horrible news for you, the town. You're going to lose 40% of your budget. Good luck. And that's what's going on real time over there.
And that's occurring why?
Because the St. Joe County and Lake County were able to continue to cover the cost of their debt in the taxes. So they had money coming
They
from
were
the
being
state. They were being
treated
subsidized.
favorably by the state.
Right, they got subsidized. So, yeah, come next year, you got debt, comes off the top. So that's what's causing the issue. But it's not true out here. I mean, you've been living with it. So, what I say is,
And the rates are low, and that's something you promote. I mean, they're lean. The communities are lean, and that when young families are looking for a place to go, millennials are looking for starting their life, they want to know there's going to be that stability. They probably don't talk about it much in the circles, but when it comes time with their new spouse or whoever, you're looking at stability. It becomes a factor. And first of all, can I get broadband? Is that not number one these days? What's my connection? What's my connectivity? Yes, no, okay, I'll come if I've got connection. And what's the cost of that connection as well? So that's why we're working on that topic as well. And it every day becomes a little bit more important. It really does. So we're going to try to host a public meeting at Purdue, and I believe we'll pack the house. And during that time, we're going to try to take the temperature of the general public. What would you be willing to pay for a fiber connection? And just to gauge the general public's aptitude, their appetite for having real, genuine fiber to the home connection. So,
I'm not gonna be at that meeting. Tony's
Yeah.
asking
I'm just
for
kidding.
money from people, for fiber. I'm gonna be at the
I'm
other
excited.
meeting, asking a developer to build something. But just to kind of close the loop, if you guys have a project that's kind of on the wings or looking to go, probably a tax abatement, look at it, would be the best way to do it. And if you're gonna do that, I pick an area where the project's gonna be, but include other property around it and just create an area.
Because you still don't have to, if the guy across the street, if he's in the area and you don't.
You don't grant it to him, he doesn't get it, so it's
Yeah.
not automatic.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Nothing's automatic.
Right, so you don't see that, so you're made aware of everything. And the assessor is, do you guys have a township assessor?
Yes, he's with the trustee, it's the same guy.
Okay.
Because we're small.
Yeah,
enough that they're-
sometimes they don't, like, my township doesn't have an assessor. I don't know why, I do know why they voted it out, but, yeah, they'll know, so you file the paperwork. But yeah, you don't get to do it. It's not an elected decision by a company to claim credit. They have to approach you and be approved. So that's what I would do. And if you got crappy parcels of property, put it in here. When you tell somebody, I know that's a crappy parcel and you have some additional cost for cost to cure the property or cost to clear or mass grading cost, hey, that's why we're going to give you an abatement. And because that was so bad, I'm going to give you a 10-year abatement and I'm going to give you 100% for the first 3 years because you had an additional cost. So there's also a lot of give and take and dialogue that happens between companies. So that's just been my experience. And you get crazy people, like I said, the apartment guy that said, I want 10 years at 100%. Let me get this right, guy. You're gonna put in 300 units, and you want me to do what? Yeah, I don't think so. But it's gonna cost $40 million. Oh, I'm sure it will, but yeah. So I get nothing for 10 years. I appreciate the income tax, but I get the jobs to build it, that's all good, but, so that, they're gonna get a bad story tomorrow. Which is gonna be, well, we decided that we're gonna give you maybe a 5-year abatement, and you get to pay $1.8 million for the sanitary line. See how they like that? I don't think they're gonna like it. Where I'm hoping to drive that project is to get that person to buy a TIF lot. And say, here's the amount of money I need for the $1.8 million that I need you to buy. And for that, I would consider giving you a little bit of tax abatement with this TIF, and that's what we're trying to get to. But
Do you all understand, when Matt's been explaining this, you're going to buy your bond, do you understand really what's occurring there?
Yes.
You do? They're virtually paying themselves back their taxes. They're paying themselves.
Upfront.
Correct. Yeah, upfront, which is by buying that bond, that's what they're doing, and then they're, that.
Sure, but you're leveraging the interest.
Yeah, correct.
So that's the push.
Exactly correct. Which is by doing it, and the key is to get that, the best rate you can.
So absolutely. So,
Enhance that credit somehow, and
yeah, like I asked for
What is the interest going right now? Say in a situation like that, what would the
It's
interest
really
be?
low. So I mean, if I'm working for a community, like I did, like I sit on Highlands Economic Development Commission, so we did a project that, it was on the boulevard, Indy Boulevard, the Main Street. So Dr. Gendro was the guy, he came in, he says, I'm going to spend $16 million, and that's what he wanted to tip, and I don't know what he was going to spend, $50 million or something. So Gendro comes in, and he's got his guy, and he says, hey, I want 5% interest. And unfortunately for him, I'm on the town side. And I said, why would I give you 5% interest? He said, I tell you what, I'm gonna recommend that we have 0 coupon bonds. You get no interest, except the cost to process the paper. So anyway, I relented and he got 1%. But in another place where it was more risky, I wanted 8% interest when I was working with the developer. But it was a way riskier project. So it goes up and down. It depends on who the developer is. You know, if they're well-known and, they have the cash to do it, you're willing to be a little more reasonable about what's going on. But, yeah. And it
The
depends.
financial advisor.
That's where the experts come in, right?
Yeah, they sure do, and they're going to be giving you some advice, because they're trying to get the deal done.
Yeah.
And get that sold for you.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, what's necessary on the credit side. And that's, massive, extremely modest, but the data center project in the city of Hammond is cutting edge economic development, and it wouldn't be in Hammond today if Matt hadn't done what he did to shepherd and walk that project through a very complex set of approvals, as well as get state legislation changed.
I didn't do that.
Well, but there's a layer of things that had to occur, probably the most complex economic development project I've ever seen, and it was orchestrated by Matt. So I feel blessed to have him sitting next to me, being
So
able
who's
to
the
talk
owner
to you
then?
guys about it.
Data center is owned by a group of people. I have a very small piece. Majority owner is a gentleman by the name of Peter Feldman, and he's developed data centers throughout his career. And his claim to fame is 50 Hudson in Manhattan. So that is a 200,000 square foot data center in a giant high rise. And I don't know how he built it or did it, but they did it. And he made a gazillion dollars.
50 Hudson I believe it was one of the first direct internet connections to, as they were forming. You
Yes.
had to go through 50 Hudson.
Yeah, you literally have to go through
Everyone.
there. Like you have to go through Cermak in Chicago.
Yeah.
So the reason the data center is where it's at in Hammond is because they couldn't work out a deal in Chicago. And that line goes right by the data center, right by that site on the other side of the train tracks. So side of the train tracks and up it goes. But in LaPorte County's instance, guess where that line goes? By the same train tracks, by the coal-fired plant in Michigan City. Same thing.
And it's just, it's mind-boggling, because all the big phone companies, they had to go through that, so they were paying fees, had to pay fees, just for traffic. It's kind of like getting on a toll road, and the industry's changed so dramatically, the deregulation of the telcos, and now you've got wireless carriers, now they go from wireless to through a fiber, back sometimes underneath an ocean, back to a wireless, what's amazing is the technological advancement to make it all happen that fast, literally that fast. And today, to be able to hold up an iPhone and have a conversation with your son or daughter on the other side of the world without even a blip in the telemetry of that picture, the advancements are just truly amazing. So those are solid investments. I mean, the fact that the data centers there opens up additional doors for Northwest Indiana and companies that need that massive data storage. It's only getting bigger every day.
But you guys are all going to quit using your phones. I'm hoping you don't. Unless you're going to quit using your phones and Netflix. We need more of that. So anyway, thanks a lot. We
Thank
talked a
you.
lot.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, give Tony a round.
So you played football against each other, where at?
I played at Andran and Tony played for Bishop Knoll.
Okay.
Yeah.
And guys, just real quick, a question not necessarily germane to our community, but if I had a line on a company that wanted to make an investment in LaPorte County, they're already in LaPorte County, but they're looking to either buy a building or break ground, who would be, it looks like either one of you guys would be kind of involved in the process. Who would be better to consult with that in directing them maybe, towards a better place?
Call Tony.
Okay.
Yeah. And Matt's forte is on the redevelopment side, so he's
Okay.
very focused on that. That allows us.
I'd say to stay in
very
my
expensive.
area.
So,
Just kidding, we do a lot of stuff.
Okay.
it's gonna get done. That's the key. That's our directive. It gets
Yeah,
done.
it gets done.
Sure.
And that's having the knowledge and having been there and done something before. We all know, it's like today, the beauty of YouTube is being able to pull up just about anything and seeing how to do it.
Yeah.
You can't do it for a tax abatement, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
No one's done that yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
You know what?
That's right.
Gotta work at it.
Yeah, I'm figuring out how to.
Become a subscriber.
That's my new channel.
Thanks, guys.
But yeah, just call me, that's why we're here.
Thanks, guys.